Good afternoon, everybody. As always, my name is JC, and welcome to my channel, Every Man's Thoughts. Today, we've got the Amazon Peter Jackson situation to break down and some other fun items to talk about, so let's get started. First thing I want to talk about today is the situation with Amazon and Peter Jackson. A little less than a week ago, Mr. Jackson was on a podcast in which he said Amazon approached him about being involved with the Rings of Power and then ghosted him. In a nutshell, they asked if he'd like to be involved with the show, and he replied that it would be impossible to make that decision without seeing some scripts first. According to Mr. Jackson, Amazon agreed to send him the scripts as soon as possible, and he never heard from them again. A day later, the story spread across the internet, and as you might imagine, some were using it as justification to make all kinds of allegations against Amazon, forcing Amazon to release this statement. In pursuing the rights for our show, we were obligated to keep the series distinct and separate from the films. We have the utmost respect for Peter Jackson and the Lord of the Rings films, and we are thrilled that he is looking forward to watching the Rings of Power. Although I've been very critical of Amazon in the past, a few things need to be said here. First, even though their statement was obviously hastily written, it was classy, on point, and struck the right note. Second, this story was gaining momentum well beyond its significance. It was well known basically from the start that Mr. Jackson would have no involvement in the series. Furthermore, this is not even remotely his project, and he works for an entirely different company, thus no one has any real justification to expect his involvement. That being said, Amazon has to face up to and own their own significant contributions to the level of mistrust between them and their fans, which is what has allowed this story to be used as an effective weapon against them. For those reasons and more, despite Amazon's statement, the story didn't die, it just continued to grow. Damage control still being needed, more leaks surfaced, one of which strongly indicating that it was the Tolkien estate that campaigned against Peter Jackson's involvement. Please keep in mind this was before Christopher Tolkien passed, and he was publicly very critical of the Jackson films. Here's my opinion on this entire situation. I do believe Amazon was acting in good faith when they originally approached Mr. Jackson. I'm going to defend them by using the same criteria I use when I attack them, by judging their actions, not their BS words. For instance, look what Amazon did when they wanted to adapt Wheel of Time. The original author, Robert Jordan, had tragically passed, so they hired his wife and the author who took over for Mr. Jordan, both as creative consultants. They wanted the most credible people for the job. Now, look at Rings of Power. They hired Tom Shippey. Yes, they later on had disagreements which led to his dismissal, but they did hire him in the first place. We know they're working with the estate, and they approached Peter Jackson. Again, when they started, they wanted the most credible people they could find, thus I believe their initial overtures were genuine. However, and this is a big however, if you're going to trade on the credibility of people like Tom Shippey, Christopher Tolkien and the Tolkien estate, I have every right to examine how seriously you're taking their input. This begs the question, how many conversations could you possibly have had with Christopher Tolkien about adapting the material before you heard his opinions about what Peter Jackson did when he adapted the material? I mean, that has to come up in the first 5 minutes, right? So if I'm going to conclude that your overtures toward Mr. Jackson were serious, I also have to include that, in fact, you were not having legitimate conversations about this subject with Christopher Tolkien and have no business trading on his name. Either that, or you just didn't care what he had to say, and again, still have no business trading on his name. Same thing goes for Mr. Tom Shippey. Does anyone really believe he didn't know what Christopher Tolkien thought about Peter Jackson's films? So again, didn't ask or didn't care. Next, I want to talk about something a little more lighthearted. A small YouTuber named Voynich has uploaded the Galadriel and Sauron theme song from Rings of Power, or so he claims. Obviously, this isn't an official Amazon channel, and I have no idea how this YouTuber acquired the music. In his comment section, it simply says, "All rights to Amazon, please don't copyright strike." Good luck with that. Continuing our theme of lightheartedness, a long-standing, almost urban legend surrounding the show was confirmed this week. During an interview with Total Film Magazine, showrunner J.D. Payne confirmed that indeed there was a pitch to do a series based on young Aragorn. I call this an urban legend because until Amazon made its official announcements, stories involving young Aragorn were easily among the most frequently speculated on. The article also states there was a pitch for a Gimli spin-off and other stories as well. I love the idea of a Gimli spin-off, but you can't do that as a billion-dollar show, and it would certainly have to be a comedy, so maybe we save that for somewhere down the line. Well, that's it for me this time. If you like what you saw, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and I will see you next time.